Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day guys, my guest on this episode is Mark Wonderlin. Mark is the visionary founder of Mosaic Media Films over in Austin, Texas. We got right into Mark's journey and mutually shared some of our filmmaking knowledge. Enjoy this one, guys. What's a bit of your backstory and what led you to starting the film production company Mosaic Media? Did you always have an interest in storytelling, or was it more the marketing thing that drew you down that path?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a little bit of both. So when I started my career out of college and I worked for a manufacturing company in the sporting goods world, and they basically made football helmets, face guards, MLB bases, but they're more of a manufacturing company. So when I worked with them in the marketing department, you when you work in a small department, you have to do everything. You're wearing lots of hats. So I did photo, video, website design, SEO, social media, print design, packaging design. I mean, had my hand in everything and learned a ton. And then when I moved to Austin about 13 years ago, I really felt that like video is where the industry is going. And this is kind of in the wild, wild west of DSLR days. So that really got me the bug to do it. So I took that foundation of like marketing and advertising and understanding that you're creating something that is designed to engage, educate, and ultimately convert the viewer. But also really appreciating the artistic side of storytelling and great aesthetics that DSLR at the time allowed me to do. And that's really kind of how I got started. And then I moved to Austin, started filming, worked with a whole bunch of cool brands. I had a training company for a few years where I was training aspiring filmmakers. And I've been all over the world filming, on Richard Branson's island. I've been to 6 countries in Asia for a documentary. We're working on a huge feature film right now for a client, and we do tons of different corporate work, both in and around Austin. So it's been pretty awesome.
Man, there's nothing like I love it when you go to a place with a specific project like that because you get to not only see the place, but you're active and doing what you love. Like that's a very cool thing to travel around and do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely a different dynamic. So when I did the Asia project, went to like Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and I don't know if I'm forgetting one, Taiwan. But it was so cool and amazing to see that stuff. But for me, it's like you're in a different mindset.
Mm.
Like when I go on vacation, it's like you're sitting there, you're taking it in, you're doing excursions. It's like when you're working, at least for me, I'm just like my mind is like so focused on that and the task at hand, where I like being there, but you very, very rarely have downtime. They were like long, 10, 12-hour days, lots of traveling within the country, but very cool and amazing opportunity nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I know it as from some of the acting work I've done when you go somewhere and it kind of helps me immerse in the project. Actually, I like to, when you're in a new place, it helps you get more immersed in that world. So initially with clients, I'm interested in do you have like a standard process or an initial question when a new client comes to you? Do you try to get to the kind of core of what's their story? How do you go about that?
Yeah. So right now, my primary focus is like sales and marketing. So I'll take all the inbound calls coming in, and typically I just let the client talk. So what I'm trying to really understand when a client comes to us is, do you have a project in mind, or is it best to kind of brainstorm on some ideas on how you can use and leverage video? I really like to start with what is the end in mind, right? So without getting too crazy about the creative, what is the goal we're trying to achieve? Where is it like you're trying to get more clicks, you're trying to get higher levels of conversion, you're trying to educate your clients? What is the metric? What does success look like? So really understanding that, and that's going to guide us to what the creative or the format is actually going to be. So I like to understand that. I also like to understand, what are you doing for marketing? What does your marketing system or funnels look like? And then also, what is like your sales and your sales enablement look like? So the strategy that I'd recommend for a B2C that's, gets most of their marketing from social media is going to be completely different from a company that's B2B, where they're doing more kind of one-to-one outbound calling, and they're high ticket items. So they need more sales enablement type of tools. and by leveraging video. So really understanding that. And then once we get a good foundation of that, then we can kind of dive into, okay, what's the best way to tell this? What's the best format for it? And then what does that look like? You know, are they shorter videos? Are they longer form videos? What are we talking about? Who's the actual audience? How do we want them to feel? What is the action we want them to take? So really, I try to have that conversation as an initial, more or less discovery with the client. And then through that process, we can usually come up with, here's a few things that I would recommend. This is kind of the process and how we work and how long it's going to take. And obviously, this is generally about what it's going to cost to produce this. And, this is kind of what we're expecting for the overall result that we're going to get by, going through this entire process of video creation for the brand or the business.
That's awesome because it's not a one size fits all
Mm-hmm.
approach, like you say. And I've found it interesting on sets and all different types of shoots. Ultimately you end up just seeing what's in the frame. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people who haven't necessarily had the experience, they don't realize the machinery
Yeah.
behind that. I
Yeah.
personally have a big interest in kind of the lean filmmaking, like trying to, I've been on sets here in Germany where like one person comes up to you with a clipboard and then another person comes up with the same one. And I'm like, do we need two people with the clipboards? But it's awesome that it's generating work for everybody. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so our clients often surprised. I think, maybe some inexperienced film people think that it's an easy process, but if they're trying to do something uh, a little bit more involved, are they often surprised by what's needed behind it?
Yeah, I think more often than not, they're typically surprised. Now, there's some projects that you can run very lean on that are very cut and dry, that don't need the extensive, conversation and dialogue. Like if we're just filming a keynote or a panel, someone's on screen, it's like, yeah, we got three cameras, three operators, we're cutting it together, making it look a TEDx, right? So it's, pretty cut and dry. When it gets to more of the brand story, the business story, that's where you have to go a little bit deeper. You need a little bit more skilled team, a little bit more people, a lot of planning involved. And then there's a lot of scrutiny on the editing because this is a video that ideally they're going to use and leverage for multiple years. And then take it a step above that, which is what we're doing now, which is a full feature film that's going to be about, 75 to 90 minutes. And you're dealing with 46 different speaking roles. You have, three times the amount of crew. There's location scouting, there's permits, there's all these other things that go into the production that the customer really doesn't realize when you have like actors rehearsing, script writing, multiple revisions, trailers, and like everything that has to go into kind of creating this is significantly more work than you could anticipate in contrast, to other, traditional kind of corporate projects.
The preparation can save you, right?
Mm-hmm.
For those
Yeah.
surprise moments that happen on as much as you're trying to control the locations, there's always something that can throw a spanner in the works in some way. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the preparation is so important.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk a little bit about the feature, or is that kind of you can't talk about that at this stage? What it's about?
Not at this stage. I really can't because we're kind of in the thick of it.
Mm.
I'd love to, come back on once, if you're
For
interested and I
sure.
can tell you more about it and I can tell you kind of behind the scenes, what's going on. But for the most part, it's just a huge undertaking where we have, a variety of different kind of, what I would call vignette stories, where they're individual stories of all these different people and how they're interacting and how they're kind of all, in many ways are interconnected. So it's a very elaborate story. And most films that you watch, you have, two or three main characters, and you kind of follow that main character story arc. With this one, there's 46 speaking characters, and there's probably about a dozen, lead characters where you see them in multiple scenes. And it's very heavy on dialogue because that's a lot about the content that we're really talking about. So it's a completely different animal than like a corporate project where we understand the business, we understand, okay, what is the problem that you're solving? What does life look like when you work with a customer? What are some things that make you uniquely different? And we just go interview the CEO, the CMO, and other people at the company. We just have a conversation with them like this. And then we take that 20 to 30 minute interview from 3 or 4 different people, and then we distill it down. That's a totally different animal compared to, working with actors and having scripted dialogue and making it believable in all aspects, not only from the way that the, actor is performing, but also the location, the set, the props, everything in that environment, that the viewer sees it as, okay, I believe this. This is to be true. And they're not getting taken out of the story by thinking that, they would never say this, it would never look like this, that kind of thing. So that's what it's a totally different dynamic for sure.
It sounds like a big ensemble. As you
Yeah.
say, there isn't one protagonist.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like all the corporate work and the other videos have prepared you for this undertaking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my staff has got a background in more of the film world, like creating shorts, creating, full features. So they're really the ones doing the line work. I'm more executive producing, so I'm kind of managing all these different areas with, a prop master, location director, all on the production side. I'm going to be really focusing on that as far as like the way the shot looks, the way that the lighting is, but we'll have like a DP, focus puller, person dedicated to audio, and so on and so forth. And then really everything I've done up to this point has kind of prepared me, but ultimately the people that I'm bringing on and people that are actual employees of mine all have a huge background in filmmaking as it is, as far as doing features. So we're going to do, I think, an amazing job for this project, that's going to impact a lot of people in a positive way and give them hope for the future. And I guess that's all I'll say there.
No, I
Yeah.
love I love in the filmmaking process how everyone brings something completely
Yeah.
different to the table. I've always thought of it as like a whole lot of hoops kind of falling,
Yeah.
and you're trying to align them or kind of shoot arrows through them at the same time, and one might sort of fall off, but another like that's
Hmm.
the complexity and kind of challenge of filmmaking, and doing a feature obviously
Yeah.
encapsulates all of that. But yeah, it's pretty cool how things have changed and evolved, and this, sounds like it might open some whole new. But that's the
Yeah.
filmmaking world, right? Like, and
Yeah.
especially in this climate that we're in, it's almost, everyone has a phone in their pocket,
Hmm.
and everybody is getting, well, not everybody, but even people who have no film experience are kind of learning how to edit and the kind of rhythm of editing, and be interesting to see where it all goes. What do you think about like the current climate of, call it, mass media?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be more and more people coming into kind of the video creation, you know, uh, environment, simply because, just like you mentioned, phones are getting so incredibly impressive. I mean, I was at a friend's kid's birthday party the other week, and I was shooting in cinematic mode of his kid blowing out candles, and I'm like, dude, this is like almost as good as our mirrorless cameras. This is like killer. And, so I think the cameras are getting so incredible. So it allows more people that have that creative, um, you know, kind of instinct, and they want to create, and they now have a tool at their disposal that's very, inexpensive and easy to operate. So I think that's a component. I think there's going to be, obviously more interesting things that kind of emerge from AI. Right now, we don't really use a ton of AI stuff, but I think it continues to get better. I had a talk with someone the other day, and they're like, all we want you to do is film our CEO on a green screen, for like 10 minutes, and get a couple of gestures. And then we're going to work with an agency that's going to use a tool called Heygen. And basically, we're just going to create an avatar of the CEO, and we'll be able to populate tons of courses and content where he doesn't have to be, like traditionally, like at a studio for 2 or 3 days, like saying it this way, saying it that way. Oh, that doesn't sound good. Do it again, you know? And that's what you can do. So Heygen is this really interesting AI software that basically clones you. So you upload like 5 minutes of footage of yourself, and then it processes all that. It takes your kind of gestures, your facial expressions, your voice, and then you just type away what you want it to say, and it'll just create a video. And the samples they have are really impressive. And I've tried it myself, and it's okay, but it's also like so close,
Mm.
like in another year or 2 years, like you're not gonna be able to tell the difference.
It's
I think it's
kind
gonna be so impressive.
it's kind of wild how rapidly it's happening. And as an artist and creative, when it first kicked, I had that kind of freak out moment about writing and creativity. And um, yeah, I'm always questioning like where the human element, but finding a balance I'm trying to find a nice kind of middle ground, this balance. And yeah, although as you say, it's close, but there's something a little bit off. But this is in a really short amount of
Yeah.
time. Like, it's scary, but it's kind of exciting. It's like a whole mix
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
for our industry,
Yeah.
how we can. But I think generally, like as a writer, I would never use it to like
Mhm.
write, but I find it great for sort of helping me kind of knock out like say a structure of something or something like that. But I would never kind of lose my voice or my thing because I think that's really really precious. What are some of the like in the corporate stuff? What are some of the pitfalls and mistakes that you've seen with projects?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that happen with projects specifically is like if the expectation is like not aligned with reality,
Mhm.
like we were talking about a little bit earlier, like clients don't understand like what goes into it, and they just think, oh, I could just, again, I could just take my phone and I can film this and it's great and it's fine. And you're charging this amount and it's this, but it's like there's a lot that goes into the planning, a lot that goes into the production side, and then even more that they don't see in the background that happens with the editing, putting it together in a cohesive way that makes sense, that is designed to kind of make people convert. And they don't see, the client doesn't see a lot. It's almost like that, iconic image that you see with the iceberg, right? So you just see the end video, but you don't see everything else. So like that expectation can sometimes be, misaligned. And that's, one of the bigger things that we kind of encounter from that. The other thing too, I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls, just from a client's perspective, is that the video is designed to be a tool, not supposed to be, necessarily like a silver bullet, right? It is a silver bullet in the sense that it outperforms any other marketing thing that you can do when you kind of, head to head with anything else. However, it has to be done in the right way. But the thing that they're typically missing is the traffic component of it. So just having a video is just like having a website, right? It's great. It can be the best website, but if no one can find it, then you're just not going to get the business. The same thing with a video. You create the best, most compelling video, but if you're not getting traffic or eyeballs on it that are in your target market, then most likely it's not going to perform. That's why I said like earlier, if you're a B2C or a B2B, your marketing strategy and the way that we create the content is going to be different based on how you're attracting clients, getting them into your system so you can build trust over time and ultimately sell to them when they're ready. Or in a sales enablement perspective, be able to use and leverage the video as a part of your pitch that helps distill down, sometimes that 30 to 60-minute pitch, could be shorter so you can do more pitches and also, gives clients more information in a concise format.
It's pretty cool that you have this balance between the marketing side and the production side because yeah, I know personally like I tend to lean more towards the creative and I've struggled with the marketing and you're absolutely right if you have something cool and you don't know who it's for and you're not getting the eyeballs on it, it can kind of just fade into so would you say that you have like a good balance between the left and right kind of brain or whatever it is or just it sounds from your
Yeah.
experience that you have a good balance of both.
Yeah, I try to have a good balance of both kind of analytical and emotional. And I think that's where that kind of like, art and craft of creating, but also the fundamental principle of like, who are we creating this for and what is the goals that they have? Why are they hiring us? And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of production companies make is they get so much into the gear and the craft and the technical side and kind of lose sight of who are we serving? And I usually say the ultimate person that we're serving is the customer's customer, right? So I'll tell my staff, in order to tell a good story, you have to fall in love with our customer's customer because that's who's watching it. That's whose lives we're ultimately impacting. But understand that the client is contracting us to do this so that they can reach that ultimate goal, so that they can, help those clients build their business and really have a bigger impact on the world. So whether doing B2B or B2C, that's the ultimate goal of, most businesses. So that's one thing that I try to stay true with, um, is have a good, balance of like creative stuff, but understand that like we're trying to achieve a certain goal. And what I'll do is I'll always do a debrief with all of our clients after the project. So the way that our workflow is I'll work on the upfront side, kind of scoping the project, coming and kind of casting some general creative and mapping out kind of what I believe is the best, marketing strategy with the types of videos that will be the biggest impact. And then my team will take care of the actual production and build the products. And then once we have it done, then I meet with the client, talk to them about, let's talk about some best practices and ways you can use and leverage this. We don't do the tactical marketing side, like pushing the buttons and, here's the audience, here's the age, here's the, demographics. We don't do that. We have partners that we kind of recommend, but a lot of times they have internal resources or they already have an agency. So it's really more about insight or collaborating with the agency and saying, let's all work together to make sure that this has the best impact for the customer and the clients that they're trying to serve.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts, but having the people who specialize in that makes a lot of sense. How do you manage your own time personally? Are you more of a spontaneous person, or are you pretty fixed with how you manage your time?
Well, I like to, you mentioned left, right, right. So I kind of I try to do a little bit of both. Yeah, I love some spontaneity, but if I were to pick a side, I'd probably say I'm a little bit more structured in nature. I do like structure. I like organization. I try to do like a specific routine. So my morning routine is very specific. The way I've managed my day is very specific. The way I manage my time with my kids, my loved ones, my friends, my family, that is very, regimented in where, in the morning, I take my kids to school, I go, to the gym, I have my meetings aligned, I have pockets of time where I can get some production done at the night, spending time with my kids. And then later on, really trying to get through any additional work that needs to be done before I go to bed. So that's kind of like my, consistent routine. But I love having, some spontaneity, in my personal life. And, every now and then, if you're a business owner, that like you're always going to have spontaneity. It's sometimes unwanted when it comes to work. Like you just burn, like turning off fires or something. Taking care of fires from like the client's this, or like the editor's word because this is happening, or like 2 weeks ago we had an issue where we were doing a huge 4-day training project for a client, and the team is calling me because this is like a project where the client was like, hey, we have this trainer coming in next week, we need you to come here and film. And there wasn't like a lot of prep because our primary contact really didn't get a lot of information. It was an outside vendor coming in, and she didn't really even know that much. She just said there's going to be some in class, and then there's going to be some like on the floor where they're doing hands-on training. We're like, okay. So, my producer goes through all the planning, everything like that. And then my lead cinematographer calls me, and he's just like freaking out. He's like, the guy didn't know we were going to be here. We can't get a good camera angle. This is going to be really bad. And this is like an hour into the filming. And so I basically, had to kind of put out that fire. We've mitigated it. We've got it resolved. And now everything's good to go. So that's some spontaneity that can happen.
There's nothing like showing up and the
Yeah.
the people don't know that that's just the worst. I've had
Yeah.
it in bands and had it on. Yeah, that's
Yeah. It was
that's
like an outside vendor. So it was like we weren't working directly with the client. So he was like unaware. Because normally when we do training, it's like you have it very structured. It's very structured, very laid out. Do we get this? Do we get this? But he was teaching other people. So we kind of had to be almost like a fly in the wall. So it was a little bit trickier of a project. But we managed totally fine. I talked to the client. They got it. They got a great, solution to the situation. The person that was, at the location. So it worked out. It worked out fine in the end.
Do you guys have a studio for kind of in-house stuff where you shoot as well, or is it all on the road?
It's all on. customers' locations. I mean, we'll
Mm.
shoot from a studio. Like we just finished one last week. We filmed Friday and Saturday, and we did it like in an Airbnb. We were doing a training course for, people to understand like real estate more effectively. And then 2 weeks before that, we were in an actual studio, and we just rent the space for a couple days. But yeah, I would say 90% of the time we're on location. We're like
Mm.
at their business, filming them, working, filming them, with the interviews. And that's typically how it is.
This classic, like I remember scouting a location and it was the week and peaceful and nobody was there. It was next to like a kind of forest with a playground. And
Yeah.
then when we went to shoot on the Sunday, playground was full, car
Oh,
parks were full.
oh
It was
God.
just it was just a
Yeah.
completely the whole thing was just completely different. And it's like it's
Yeah.
okay to check a location, but perhaps it's good to check it at night, in the day, in the morning. To You're just trying to
Oh God.
capture as
Yeah.
much stuff you can so that it saves you time and money or whatever it may be on
Yeah.
the on the
Yeah.
day.
That's why I always try to like shoot interiors because you can control the lighting and it's a more controlled situation with audio. It's like whenever you're doing stuff outside, it's always like, oh God. Like you
Plain.
do that, like you're
Yeah.
dealing with that, like, oh, there's a car, or what's crazy is we're filming and then there's like an airplane that keeps going by every 10 minutes because this is closer to the airport, It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Random random
Yeah.
people. I've been a bit frustrated with people as well. I was doing a shoot here in Hanover in Germany, and it was a 360 camera. So the
Yeah.
crew, it was in the main square in this beautiful old square, and the crew, because it was 360, had to hide. So I wasn't used to that because they were all hiding because it's a 360
Hmm.
thing. So I'm standing with this 360 camera, and it was very complicated eye medicine text like ophthalmology. So
Yeah.
it was all numbers and things, and I was having a bit of a time getting through it. And just as I got towards the end of a take, nearly getting the whole way through, I met some tourists just walked right through
Oh God.
the frame. And
Oh God.
yeah, it was a tough, tense, tense
Oh
moment. But
God.
dealing,
Yeah.
but I understand that's why I've seen on the big sets, you control the streets, you cordon things
Yep.
off. But when you're
Yeah.
doing like a smaller or an indie thing, that control that you're talking about
Yeah.
can get harder and harder.
Yeah.
Sometimes cool things happen too, but that's the
Yeah.
nature of the beast. I'm
Yeah.
quite
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm quite new to this term funnel. So
Mhm.
in it, my understanding of it in its simple form, it's a site that people go to where all the courses, whatever they may be, are there. So rather than going to a straight to a video, there's a kind of curated site. Is that a very basic definition of it, or?
Well, the way I would define a funnel is basically more or less like a series of steps that you take your customer on to get the ultimate conversion, right? So I'll give you an example. So a simple funnel could be a customer finds your ad on social media, right? So that's kind of step one. So you have a shorter form video because social media, skews towards a shorter view time. On Facebook, the average view time is 10 seconds, and 85% of people don't listen to sound, so you have to caption it, right? So you have that shorter form video that's designed to kind of interrupt them, right? So they're scrolling, you're interrupting them. Then you would the idea is that you take them and they click and they go to a dedicated landing page about what they clicked on. So whatever your headline is, your landing page would have the same headline and it'll give more information. So it'll have a longer form video at that point. So that's the second step of the funnel. The ultimate goal is to get them to, convert. So the conversion could be a phone call, it could be filling out a form, it could be scheduling a call. So let's just say it's scheduling a call, right? So the next step would be scheduling a call. So they would fill out the form. The next step in the funnel is where they go after that form is filled out. So you have the social media, the landing page, filling out the form, and then you have what's called the thank you page. And that would be the fourth step in the funnel. The thank you page would ultimately have a video as well, just preparing them for what the next steps are. Thanks for filling out the form. What's going to happen here is X, Y, and Z. Then the next step in the funnel would be kind of the email. So they're confirming what they scheduled for. Thanks so much for filling it out. We got it. We're set for Thursday at 10 o'clock. Here's what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z. Then the next step would be kind of the reminder emails or value-based emails. So you would have an email that's like, hey, I know our meeting isn't till, Thursday at 10 o'clock. However, I've created this great PDF guide that'll help you with X, Y, and Z, right? So you're kind of building value over those different touch points. And you're also giving an opportunity for them to know you before they actually know you. So if you're, a service-based company, this is really good because before they get on that call, they usually will have a pretty good handle on who you are. It's funny because I'll get on a call with people and they'll just be like, hey, Mark, how are you doing? And I'm just like, okay. It's like they know me because they've seen, all that stuff in the funnel that they feel like they kind of know me a little bit more. They've seen me talk on videos. They've seen me on the ads. Now they get to hear my voice. And it's just like, oh, cool. I get to meet Mark. I've seen a ton of this guy. This is cool. And that's really what you want to create when you're doing a funnel is it's a series of steps to kind of ascend people to ultimately your goal, which is like closing a job, giving more information, providing value. And whether you're B2C or B2B, that's ultimately what you want to do. Now, there's different strategies because what happens is if we use that same scenario and you have the ad that goes to the landing page, the reality is like 90, 95% of people, they're going to leave. They're not going to come back, right? They're going to say, not now, right? They're always going to take the path of least resistance if they don't have enough pain. So that's where you do additional marketing, which is retargeting. So you could retarget them other content, which is like, hey, I know you were thinking about this. Our customers have thought the same thing. Like it's going to cost too much. It's going to take too much time. I don't know if it's going to work, right? So you have your customers actually saying all those objections, bringing them back to that landing page. And you can retarget to people at a significantly lower cost than you can traditional advertising with cold traffic because, use Facebook as an example. They're saying this person has already signaled in a micro conversion, which is clicking on the link. They've already signaled that they're interested in your stuff. So we're okay sending them more things because they've already said it, that they like your stuff. And that's the way that that's the way that you can kind of get people into that funnel system or kind of ascending them from one step to another. And that's the way, I think it's a good example of how it works.
That's pretty cool if it establishes a familiarity and a kind of trust by the time they get to you. It's a staged process instead of some kind of just like cold spamming type. I mean, our inboxes are just smashed with,
Yeah.
it's been a bit of a dilemma, like, because I'm very much about establishing personal connections, and I just, trying to reach a large amount of people, that's difficult to write to every single person individually. But at the same time, if I get spammed, it just doesn't feel personal. So that funnel
Yeah.
process is like a nice tiered way of getting to that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're right. If they divert, there's still kind of there's still a contact there and you can perhaps take it in a different, is that a new thing or that's always been
It's
around the
kind of
front?
been out. It's kind of been out for a while. There's different systems and processes and approaches to it.
Mm,
I gave one example. Another example of like a funnel is where you basically, instead of running ads that says, buy my product or hire my service, you're basically providing something of free, right? You're providing something free. So it could be a PDF, it could be a video, it could be a mini course, it could be a guide. It's something that they're in the research mode. Like the actual consumers maybe in the research mode, they're thinking about it. They're not ready to make a call. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to talk to somebody. I don't want them to sell me, but I am interested in finding out more information. And it's got to be something of high value that they would pay for, right? So one of our quote unquote lead magnets is basically a free survey. So you basically fill out the survey. It's a 5-question survey. And basically this survey will take you to results. So if you're B2B, a B2C, how do you market? What are your primary goals? And based on that criteria, it will give them, one of 27 different options to say, if you're a B2C and you sell and you primarily market through social media, here's the videos that you need to be thinking about
mm.
because, and there's 27 different options. So you'd get a custom video and a custom PDF. And, obviously, if and when they're ready, they have this information. Like, these are the videos I should be thinking about for my company. then they'll potentially call us. And that's the idea of providing something of value and then marketing to people over time. So they download that in exchange for their email, and then we put them on our newsletter, and then they go into a separate funnel with other emails that again are providing value that they can unsubscribe to. So one email that they get is like, hey, this isn't going to work. Totally understand. We had a same customer that said the same thing. Here's kind of the story about it. Here's the video of him actually talking about it, and so on. Another one is, what's the difference between good and great video? Here's an example. Here's the difference on a project that a client had done before we work with them. We work with them. Here's the result when they work with us, right? So you're providing value and thinking about what are the things and the questions that they have in their mind that are objections, and how can you bring them closer to feeling more like they trust you and they know you and they're ready to take that step of that ultimate conversion, which is a call, a meeting, whatever the case may be. Or if you're B2C, it's a sale. I really want to buy this product because, of all this stuff. And that's really like another kind of strategy when it comes to funnels.
I saw the survey link on your site, and yeah, it's nice to get a grasp of that again, because it gives the client some initial thought about, okay, what do we want and what are we trying to do here? When I was working in design in like a small office, often those first initial meetings, that it would have been nice to have had like some pre-steps before that where they've done their own kind of thinking and established what and had some answers given to them, because they may, from that point they may not have even gone any further, and that's okay. But often in the meeting, they'd realize something that they could have realized in a previous step, like if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I've had conversations with clients where they come to me and they usually will have an idea on what they already want to do. And the questions are, can you do this? And how much does it cost? And it's just like, yeah, I'm happy to answer that for you, but let's take a step back and get a handle on like, how are you marketing? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Because what'll happen is they're like, well, we want to do a video about us and kind of what we do. And then I find out that they're going to be marketing on social media and they want to put this 3-minute video on social media. And I'm like, you could do that, but
Mm.
probably not going to perform well. What you really want is to create a series of social media videos on different angles of that video. So one angle could be a testimonial that's, kind of plucked from that main video. One angle could be, what is the major problem the customer has? That's another angle that could be plucked from the video. Another angle could be, what are the 3 different, benefits of the product or service? So you're doing all these different angles. And you see this happen online. You just probably don't realize it. Think about like a big B2C industry, like consumer product goods for like women with makeup, right? So like women with makeup, it's like, okay, you've got the influencer angle, right? And then you've got the before and after angle. And then you've got the, oh my gosh, I look like this angle, and the kind of bougie angle, right? So you have all these different angles where you're trying to market and you're determining, really you're testing what angle is resonating the most with the customer. And then that one you spend more marketing dollars on, rather than just creating one social video and just hoping, oh my gosh, I hope this works, or create one brand video that's super long for social media and hoping that it just works. So the idea is that you test these kind of different angles on social, and then based on one that works well, then you send them to that landing page with a longer form video because they've signaled, I'm interested in this product. Now tell me a little bit more, right? So the social videos are really just designed to kind of capture people's attention and see what words or angle or criteria is really resonating with them. And it's kind of like more or less kind of speaking their language. And then you can show them that kind of more story-based video about the product or service that you offer.
That's the classic thing at the moment, is like, how do you tell a story or capture someone's attention in such a micro span of attention times that are getting less and less and less? But as you say, if the social media type stuff, if you're aware that that is just to
Mm-hmm.
gain that impression that you perhaps can't, I've been overwhelmed like trying to pack a whole long story into like a 30-second video, but
Yeah.
you're aware if that's an impression that can get them, that there's some interest and leads to them going to the longer format thing.
Yeah.
That's the all this these different formats and different social medias can be quite overwhelming. But the way you break it down, it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And again, with that survey, if somebody just came into a meeting and then you challenged them on some of their questions, naturally, given your expertise, all of a
Mhm.
sudden they get overwhelmed and they start getting nervous and it's too much and they're possibly out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but that's what we're hired for, is to kind of distill all the craziness and
Mm. That's a
narrow it
better,
down.
yeah,
I think
distill the craziness. That's the,
I think the biggest challenge customers have is that they want to say too much. And there's so much that you can show without actually telling. And we try to distill it down. So you mentioned, how do you tell a good 30-second story? So there's obviously a lot of different things that you can do. Is one, focus on one topic and think about your video almost like a headline, right? So what is your headline, and how can we visually illustrate that headline in a short soundbite? The other component is like just distill it down to problem, solution, result, right? And that's how you can distill it down. I had this problem. This is how they were able to fix it. This is what my life looks like now, in one fluid sentence. And there's your kind of 30-second, thing. Another thing too, as we're talking about social media, because it's typically kind of cold traffic, the thing is that businesses don't need to get the impression that you need to hire a fancy company like us to do social media ads. The reality is that a lot of, what's called UGC, or user generated content, with the phones perform better than the kind of more polished content that we have. And the main reason is, there's actually two reasons. So one reason is because, first off, people don't realize it's an ad. And when people see ads, and if they're not, in, bleeding pain for that product or service, they're most likely just going to scroll past it. So that's like reason number one. They kind of get tricked into not realizing that it's an ad. That's number one. The number two is, it goes back to the conversation we were having about AI, about authenticity, right? That human factor. So when you're doing something with your phone and it's really close, it feels a little more intimate and authentic, opposed to, documentary style, where kind of off camera, you're getting interviewed. It just feels very, production heavy, and it loses some level of authenticity when it's on social. Now, when they've clicked on that and they've entered into your brand, that's a totally different story. That's where you want to have everything like look professional, look polished, really well put together, because now they're making a buying decision. Can I trust these people? Is this a scam? This guy's doing this out of his basement. That's kind of like what goes through a buyer's mind. And that's why that, landing page and subsequent marketing should be a little bit more on the polished end, but the front end can be more of a UGC style, and you can easily test different angles, more cost effectively when you're doing it yourself instead of hiring an agency.
yeah, that rough versus polished thing. It's I've been experimenting with it as well, and
Yeah.
it's so cool that you can do something rough initially, but when you've had experience in this field, and if you're, I'm kind of a recovering perfectionist. It's like, if you have that in you, you want to make this slick thing, but the slick thing may not resonate. It's about getting the message through.
Mhm.
And that show don't tell thing, like, that's just massive. Like, that's just been a huge across filmmaking. How do
Yeah.
we show this and not tell it?
And a lot of it depends on where's the platform you're putting it on, and what is the overall brand image that you want, and what type of business do you have, right? It's totally dependent on that, right? So if you're like a professional podcaster and you want to be known for having high quality podcasts, then you want to stay consistent with high quality stuff. But occasionally putting a selfie video gives people that kind of authentic feel. But if you're just like a local roofing company and you just want to like connect with people in the area in your kind of geographical space, then having a kind of face-to-face get to know you is sufficient, where you don't have to be this super overly polished person on social. And it's going to be different from like Facebook to Instagram to YouTube, right? YouTube skews a little bit higher on the quality side, because that's, where a lot of professional influencers are at. Where like, the professional influencers that are on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, they're usually more or less the UGC style, with their phones, and they're, talking, or they're dancing, or they're just doing crazy stuff and creating, cool content. So it's a little bit different dynamic depending on the platform and the type of business you have.
But it's awesome that you take that into account by the sound of with your clients. Like, again, going back to what we said earlier, you're not doing a one size fits all. I imagine
Hmm.
looking at the client, and if they are the roof people or
Yeah.
whatever, you're like, well, I think stylistically, call it, this is
Hmm.
better suited to you. Whereas, like, I
Yeah.
imagine some production companies would just be a little bit like across the board. But you're
Hmm.
right; it's very much tailored to what the client needs and those
Yep.
end goals that you're talking about. To bring it home, a couple of things. So tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge. This could be anything, something that's benefited you personally, something that's arisen from our discussion, something relative to branding or making videos. Is there something that springs to mind that people could try?
Yeah, I think if I was to put any challenge to business owners is to create three pieces of content that you can put on your marketing to start doing some content. We talked a lot about UGC, and I think this is the way to do it. Is just start with some user generated content, put it on your website, and think of three different things. So, like number one, what is your number one FAQ and how you can provide value to customers about questions they have about your industry. Number two, the problem. What is the biggest problem your customers have? And how do you understand that problem and how do you uniquely solve it? And then I would go with like maybe a micro story, which is problem, solution, result, right? So the problem, the solution you provide, and then ultimately the result. So if you do those three and just start, and then again, to go back to what I said earlier, is traffic, right? So just creating them is hard, posting them, not that difficult. But what's going to happen is if you just post it on, I'm just going to use Facebook as an example, you're not going to get any views because like Facebook basically says to businesses, unless you boost this post or pay for an ad, we're only going to show it to 10% of your audience that has said that they want to see your stuff. So go, like I said earlier, get the traffic. So create the videos, post them, get the traffic by either paying for some form of advertising or boosting.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's kind of a false, even for people who are just using social media kind of personally, it's this false misconception. It's like, oh, if I have 1,000 people on my thing, if I post this
Yeah.
video, the brain's kind of like 1,000 people will see it. When actually, with all
Yeah.
the advertising, with the people who are actually even still using it, the people that are on it, you break it down, you're probably getting like 20 eyeball. So
Yeah.
but it's a little bit dangerous because we have this misconception, about and then if we place value on that, oh, nobody's watching my stuff. I've got, it could be really, but I think
Yeah.
awareness of that whole thing. Is there a is there a book or a film or a series that's had a big impact on you, or just a favorite of if any of those things, or music?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big avid audiobook person. So like I love listening to like a variety of different business books, whether it's stuff on investing, entrepreneurship, a personal growth, biohacking. I love all that stuff. I think probably from a business standpoint, one of the most impactful books that I read was like probably 20 years ago, and it's still continued to stick with me. It's The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I think I've listened to it probably half a dozen times over the years. And it really distills down kind of like the three different archetypes of a business owner, which is like, the creator, the manager, and the entrepreneur, right? So, and I think I've gone through the evolution of almost all of those archetypes through the years, and it's just a great, fascinating book. Highly recommended if you're a business person, whether you're aspiring entrepreneur or an existing one. It's super powerful.
It sounds like it's still as prevalent today as it was back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a I worked at Hard Rock Cafe for a while. I was just interested in the branding of Hard Rock because the original guys were two guys, and one was a visionary or
Yeah.
a sort of creative, and the other was the more business minded. So together they, when you combine the two things, where can people find you and the production company?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to mosaicmediafilms.com. And that survey we are talking about earlier, just go to mosaicmediafilms.com/resources. And there's a lot of free stuff there if you're thinking about video but don't know where to start.
Yeah, it's been really awesome to like break it down, like break down your process and the way you treat these projects and clients. Like it's been very informative. So I really appreciate your time, man. I'm excited for the progression of this feature. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to get you back on when that's all wrapped.
Yeah, for sure. Would love to do it. Thanks a bunch for having me on. This has been fun as well. Appreciate it.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.